Hey everybody, this is Russ from Retro Game Core. So one of the things I've learned about retro emulation over the past 6 months or so is that it's an incremental process. It's not every day where a new emulator will come out and make everything a lot better overnight. Well, I'm happy to report that actually today is one of those days, because we now have dramatic improvements to Dreamcast performance on the RG351P and similar devices. And this is all thanks to the front end called RetroRun, which has been ported over for the ODROID Go Advance, and then now moved over to ArkOS, which supports several devices. Now, in addition to Dreamcast performance, this also improves other Dreamcast-based systems, for example, Atomiswave and NAOMI. And all three of these play exceptionally well. I'm going to show you a lot of gameplay footage here, and you're going to be impressed. And on top of that, they've also improved performance for Sega Saturn games as well. I've never considered Sega Saturn to be something that's playable on an RK3326 device, but this is starting to change my mind. Now I'm going to make a few assumptions going into this video. Number one is that you have a device that can run ArkOS. That includes RG351P, RG351M, RGB10, RGB20, RK2020, or the two versions of the ODROID Go Advance. On top of that, I'm also going to assume that you've already installed ArkOS onto one of your SD cards. And finally, I'm going to expect you have the required BIOS files in the BIOS folder, and then you're going to have your games loaded into the appropriate Atomiswave, NAOMI, Dreamcast, or Saturn folder. And if you don't know how to do all of that, I would recommend you go to the ArkOS wiki page. It'll show you everything you need to know about all this. Okay, so once you've installed ArkOS, you need to make sure that you're connected to the internet, and then we're going to run an update to make sure you have the most recent version of this firmware. It's going to take you to a screen where it's going to prompt you to type in OK to make sure you know what you're getting into. And then once you confirm that, it's going to run the update. It'll take about a minute and it'll reset your device for you. Okay, so now once you're in here, you need to actually turn on the emulator. So you're going to go and hit Start and then go into Emulator Settings, and then go and find Sega Dreamcast. And within here, you need to set your emulator and your core. For emulator, you're going to use RetroRun 32. For core, you're going to set it to Flycast 32 Rumble. Sorry that everything's all blurry. This is just the way my camera works when I'm using a black device. It wigs out. You want to do the same for Atomiswave, NAOMI, and Sega Saturn. Okay, once that's set up, you're actually ready to play games. So let's just go into the Dreamcast folder and let's pick out a game here. We'll start with Virtua Fighter 3 TB. So one of the most immediate changes you're going to see is that the sound runs so much better on this emulator. But let's also talk about the visual representation as well. This is a standalone emulator and it's very lightweight, and there's no ability to change anything, for example to show frames per second or things like that. So really you're just stuck with what you have here. Let me use a macro lens here and show you how the pixelation looks. So as you can see here, everything looks fairly sharp. Obviously it has to compensate for the 480 by 320 resolution on the device itself, and that's why the text isn't super sharp, but at the same time I'm impressed by the quality of these images here. So even though the device has a 480 by 320 display, it's actually pushing a 640 by 480 signal, so it looks nice and crisp in high resolution. Now when it comes to gameplay itself, like I mentioned before, you can't see the frames per second, so you kind of have to get a feel for it. This really isn't a numbers game at this point, it really is whether or not a game is enjoyable to you. And honestly, I kind of like it this way. I don't have to sit there and focus on the numbers and try to see whether or not this is going to meet the frames per second that I require. Instead, I just have to figure out whether or not I actually enjoy playing the game. And even though I'm terrible at Virtua Fighter 3, this is probably the best performance I've seen yet. Now another cool thing is that one of the testers actually made a Google document where they logged all of their performance as they were testing everything. And they used a really handy chart here. It basically is green means very good, orange means it's at least playable, and then white means it doesn't work at all. And as you can see here, at least half of the games are green, and other than the ones that are really slow, there are a lot of orange ones too. And if you're wondering about a specific game, I would encourage you to check out this first, and then at least you can see how other people have gauged its performance. All in all, there's about 125 games that have been tested so far. And he also did the same for Sega Saturn, which is in a different tab. Okay, so I'm just going to shut up and let the games play at this point. I really want to make sure you hear the sound difference here, as well as the visual performance. So let's start with Sonic Adventure 2.
Attention all units. Suspects seen heading south. Block all major roads and capture the suspect. Get ready, fight!
Yellow Wizard has gained a level.
Now we're going to move on to Atomiswave. I'm going to show off some of the harder games to play here. Okay, here's Sega NAOMI. I don't really have many of these games, so I'm just going to show off one of them here. And finally, here's Saturn. Now temper your expectations, Saturn is very difficult to emulate, but you'll see the performance is pretty dang good, all things considered. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. I hope you were as impressed as I am with this new emulation process. I used to think that Sega Dreamcast was one of the worst consoles to emulate on the RG351P, but this has kind of changed my mind here. At this point, I would say this performance is actually probably better than PSP performance. Bear in mind that none of this included any frame skip or anything else like that. And I think on a low-powered chipset like the RK3326, this is quite the feat. So let me know what you think in the comments below. How is this performance to you? As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you found this helpful, and we will see you next time. Happy gaming!